Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gertis. I'm a professor who tries to help you have some context and so that you can understand what's happening in Ukraine. One of the things that I tell my students is that when you have to contort the facts in order to make it fit your narrative, something's wrong with that narrative. Okay, so let's apply that same kind of reasoning to what Putin is doing, talking about Nazis. Okay, first things first, the word Nazi is twisted in the way that Putin used it. He doesn't mean Hitler with the Nazi party. He means he's playing on that, but he means something broader. Nazi to him means like something anti-Russian. And he's using Nazi as a term because it harkens back to Hitler, but it's not necessarily Jewish or exterminating the Jews or socialist, like National Democratic German Socialist Party. It's not like that. It's something a little bit different, broader, anti-Russian. The Jewish part isn't really the issue, although because he's chosen to use that term, now two things happen. It has the baggage and he has to stick with it. Like he can't just shift gears into something else and say, it really wasn't that. It also means nationalist, like Bandura nationalist, like the Banderites, right? Bandura was pro-Ukrainian. He was not a Nazi, but he worked with Nazis in order to get what he was after, which is Ukraine's national sovereignty. But those things are confounded, and it looks like Nazism if you're not aware of what's going on in World War II. And so Putin's trying to play on that. Okay, so with that, let's watch a couple of clips to show how Putin is saying what he's saying, and I'm going to stop periodically and try to explain some things. The attitude of the world to the events related to the preconditions of the beginning of the Second World War, its course and results in many respects, give an understanding of modern processes, and new meanings and challenges of time clearly show that in 1945 Nazism was defeated, but unfortunately it has not been eradicated. It is manifested again in the same Russophobia or anti-Semitism and the glorification of Nazi criminals, direct propaganda of Nazism in the Baltic. Okay, let's stop there. Nazism was a bad thing. We all get that. Has it been eradicated? He's saying, no, it hasn't been eradicated. It's come back in a different form of a Russophobia, that's one, or anti-Semitism, that's two. Now, he's tying those things together. Whether they have anything to do with each other or not is beside the point. And the glorification of Nazi criminals, here we're talking about folks like Bandera, who was about, from the Ukrainians' perspective, Bandera was about Ukrainian national sovereignty and unity, not about the other stuff where he worked with Nazis. Direct propaganda of Nazism in the Baltic countries, in Ukraine, also have become the norm. It's as if Nuremberg never existed. There are no international laws prohibiting such actions. So he's going to take it into his own hands to wipe it out unilaterally because there's no international law to go and do that. And Russians are apparently being attacked in Ukraine as a consequence. That's going to be his argument. Moreover, history has been used as a weapon of ideological struggle, and we need an adequate instrument of defense capable not only of repelling, but also of preventing any such attacks. As if Ukraine was trying to attack Russia, right? Like he's making it like it's all defensive when it's really not. He's on the offense, Ukraine's on the defense. Okay, veterans, historians, and researchers with whom I've met on numerous occasions have repeatedly spoken about the need for this. The proposal to create a national center of historic memory has been made more than once. Okay, so what's he saying? He's saying this was a problem in World War II. It's a problem again now. It's basically the same thing reincarnated, and we have to do something about it, and we're going to create a legal or cultural or some kind of organization or institution that can show this is what it is and repel the direct threat. Now, he's also asked here in this other interview, this was, by the way, this was Anton Gerashenko, and Anders Aslan posted this Anton Gerashenko post on Twitter. We're going to look at another one of his posts. He said, Putin talks about Jews and the fact that President Zelensky is a Jew. I think it's worth listening to. Now, the first one wasn't bad, but this one is just, it's crazy distorted. Like, I can't understand how he can even say what he's saying with a straight face. Okay, here we go. May I ask you for an important clarification? We just heard your dialogue about how many Jews were killed by Nazi collaborators in Ukraine. Now, let's first say, did that happen? Sure, there were these kind of things happening in Ukraine in World War II. Okay, that is then, this is now, and he's linking that to Zelensky. Okay, here we go. First of all, we were talking about civilians in the Soviet Union as a whole. It turned out that there were over 13 million people, and then a separate question was asked about the tragedy of the Holocaust and the murder of the Jews. Then the logical question is, how does all this relate to the fact that modern Ukraine, with all that is happening there now, is led by an ethnic Jew? After all, Western leaders are always pointing out to Russia that what kind of Nazism is there if they have a Jew at the helm? Yes, I've already mentioned that. I probably can't add anything new, but I think it's important to repeat it, namely that the Western supervisors put at the head, okay, stop there. So it's Western leaders that put this guy at the head. It's not that he was elected by Ukrainians. He was put there by the Western overlords, right? That's what he's going to argue. Okay, put there at the head of modern Ukraine, a man who is an ethnic Jew with Jewish roots, with Jewish ancestry. And in this way, in my opinion, they cover up the anti-human essence, which is the foundation. So he's arguing that essentially, like, we have a term called Uncle Tom, based on the book Uncle Tom's Cabin. He's essentially saying that Zelensky is doing the bidding of Nazis because he's Uncle Tom. The Uncle Tom was a black slave who was like working for the white masters rather than, you know, actually being like other slaves. He was almost subverting what the slaves, or making it worse for the slaves by working for the white masters. Here, he's saying that that's what Zelensky is doing, this Jew with Jewish roots, with Jewish ancestry, and it's even worse, he's going to go on and say. The basis of the modern state, it makes the whole situation extremely disgusting that an ethnic Jew covers up the glorification of Nazism and covers up those who head it. Let's stop there for a second. So, he's conflating two things. Zelensky has no problem with Bandera as a leader who is trying to provide a unified Ukraine. Is he excited about his workings with the Nazis? Well, he understands that in order to get to this. It's kind of like Lincoln in the Civil War. Lincoln made a comment about, like, we think about Lincoln freed the slaves, and that's a true statement. But Lincoln at one point said, if I could preserve the Union by not freeing the slaves, I would do it. If I could preserve the Union by freeing all the slaves, I would do it, because he was all about the Union. Bandera was very much like Lincoln in that regard. His primary thing was about national unification. So he's confounding these, and he knows that he's confounding these, and then he's using that to make the whole thing about Nazi this or Nazi that. Nazi to him is really Ukrainian nationalism. I mean, that's how you should read when you hear Nazi when being said. Okay. The Holocaust in Ukraine, which was the extermination of 1.5 million people. Okay, so was Nazism a problem in Ukraine? Yes, in World War II. Is Nazism a problem in Ukraine now? If you use the definition of Nazi that the Nazis used, it's not the same thing. There are some supremacist groups there, but there's some same size of supremacist groups, or roughly, in Russia and many other countries, and they're very, very small. I did my master's thesis on the Nazis, so I know what I'm talking about with the difference between Nazis a la World War II and whatever distorted view that Putin's using the same kind of word, and that's part of the confounding here. He's using the same word to mean two different things. And that's where we are. Okay, when you see that kind of thing, you have to understand that if you're twisting and contorting the facts in order to fit the narrative, something's not right. And that's the case of what's going on here. Okay, I hope that helps you understand what has happened, why Nazis aren't really like World War II Nazis. It's better to understand it when Putin talks about it as Ukrainian nationalists and or anyone who's Russophobic in any meaningful way. All right, that's all that I have. If this was helpful to your understanding, please press like, share, or subscribe. Come back tomorrow. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, the coffees, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.